Hi. Well, I was born with an unusual visual condition called achromatism. So it means that I've never seen color. I've always seen in grayscale. So I've never seen blue, I've never seen yellow, I've never seen orange. I don't know what color looks like. So as a child, I tried to ignore the existence of color, but it was impossible for me to ignore the existence of color because people keep mentioning colors every single day in elements that contain color words like Greenpeace or Yellow Pages or Bluetooth. There's many daily elements that contain them. Red Cross, Pink Panther. There's also a last name called James Brown, for example. He has it in his last name. Also this huge country called Greenland. So there's so many elements that appear every day that contain the word of a color that I couldn't ignore colors. Also when you use it as a code, hot water, cold water, it's usually used with colors. Also maps, this is fine, but if I go to Tokyo, I can get easily lost because some maps only use color codes. And when I was learning the colors of flags, I had this situation. So 3 different countries share exactly the same flag to me. So it's a social element. So I wanted to have this social element in my life also because if someone would ask me, have you seen a man with ginger hair, blue eyes, and dressed in pink? I would have absolutely no idea because the only information I get here is that the man has hair, that he has eyes, and that he's not naked, basically. So to me, seeing in grayscale was good. I have many advantages. I see better at night. Grayscale vision gives me better night vision. I can also see longer distances because color doesn't interfere with distance. I can memorize shapes more easily because color doesn't distract me. And photocopies are cheaper in black and white. So this was always an advantage. So I didn't want to change my sight. I didn't want to change my sight, but I wanted to have a sense of color. So when I was studying music, I realized that there's been many theories relating color and sound. There's been a theory created centuries ago by Newton relating each color of the rainbow to a musical note. So I was really interested in this. There is something in common between colors and sounds. They are both frequencies. Color is a light frequency and sound is an audio frequency. So I was interested in seeing whether or not we could create something that would allow me to hear the frequencies of light. So we created a prototype in 2003. That's now 14 years ago. And we created this system that is basically, at the beginning, it was a webcam connected to a 5-kilo computer and a pair of headphones, and the software was transposing the light frequencies to sound frequencies. So each color has its own light frequency. Red, for example, has 420 millions of waves per second. If we could hear these waves, we would hear a specific note. So the software was simply transposing these frequencies until they became audible, and this allowed me to hear the frequencies of the colors around me. So I memorized the sound of red, the sound of orange, the sound of yellow, and then I was able to distinguish colors by hearing the frequencies of light. So first I memorized the first basic colors, and then I upgraded the software, but while I was upgrading the software, I was actually upgrading my sense of color. So I started with 6 colors, then 12, then 24, then 48, then 100, then 200, then 300, until I got to 360 microtones for different tones of colors. This is how I sense color. So it's sine waves, electronic waves, very subtle differences between orange now, between red and orange now. So it took me 3 years to memorize these different microtones. So at the beginning, my brain got this as information. It was data transposed into sound, and my brain just got it as some kind of information. Then it became a perception, and in the end, it became a new sense. It became feelings as well. I started having favorite colors by the sound that I was receiving. At the beginning, it was a bit chaotic because there's color everywhere, so I'm constantly hearing electronic music wherever I look. So at the beginning, it was a bit chaotic, but slowly the brain got used to it, and after 5 months, it became normal to hear colors all the time. I also added different volume levels depending on the saturation. So if a color is very, very vivid, I hear it louder. And if it's dull and gray, I hear it much, much softer. So once I was able to sense all the visual colors, I didn't see why I should stop there, because there's many more colors that exist that the human eye cannot sense, but that machines can sense, like infrareds and ultraviolets. There's also many other species that can sense these colors. So I didn't see why I should stop in the visual spectrum. So in 2008, I decided to include infrared and ultraviolet perception in my own body. So since then, I can actually sense near infrared and near ultraviolet. This allows me, for example, to detect when I go into a space if there's any movement detectors in a room. And then this allows me, for example, to tell if the alarms are on or off in a shop or in a bank. And in many cases, they are off. So it's interesting to sense this. Also, ultraviolet allows me to detect if it's a good day or a bad day to sunbathe. Because if I sense there's a high level of ultraviolet, then I just avoid the sun or I just put some extra cream. So my aim is to continuously extend my perception of color beyond the visual spectrum. After that, there will be the radio waves and the X-rays. So my aim was not to use technology or to wear technology. My aim was to become technology. I wanted to have a new sensory organ. I didn't want to create a wearable device. I didn't want to create a tool either. I wanted to have a new body part. And then I looked at nature and I thought that maybe the best would be to create an antenna. So I looked at there's many insects and animals that have antennas as a sensory organ. So I thought that maybe the best option would be to create an antenna. I created different prototypes. And in the end, when I finished the design of the antenna, I went to the doctor and I said I wanted an antenna implant. And he said, sorry, we don't do this here. You have to go somewhere else. But then I insisted and I said, I think it should be done in a hospital. And then they said that I had to convince a bioethical committee. So I proposed the surgery to the bioethical committee, and they said it was not ethical to add an antenna in a human for 3 reasons. One, because the antenna goes beyond the visual spectrum, so this was not ethical for them. Secondly, because this is not a pre-existing body part. If it was an arm or a leg, it would be ethical, but a new body part was not ethical for them. And the third reason was they were very worried about the image the hospital would have if someone came out with an antenna sticking out of the head. So they said no to the surgery, but then I tried to find a doctor willing to do the surgery anonymously, and then I found one. So we did the surgery. It took 3 hours, so basically my head was face down. We reduced the skin, the head, and then we created 3 implants, which then was basically merged into my bone, and then the antenna and my head were merged, and it took 2 months for the antenna to merge with my skeleton. So this is now part of my skeleton. So I'm officially taller now. This is part of my body. And it has 4 implants. One is the chip that vibrates depending on the light frequencies. The second one is, the second and the third is the antenna structure. And we decided to add a 4th implant, which is internet connection. So I can also receive colors from external devices. So the internet now has 5 points of connection. There's 5 people in the world that have permission to send colors to my head. They can use any device that has internet connection. And for example, with a mobile phone, if there's a beautiful sunset in Australia, my friend from Melbourne can just stream live images from his mobile phone to my head. So I could be here, but I could be receiving the colors of a sunset in Australia. So this is a way of sharing a sense and using the internet as a way of sharing senses with my friends. Also, if they send colors while I'm asleep, if they send blue colors at 3 or 4 a.m. and I'm sleeping, then my friends can actually color my dreams. Because if I'm sleeping, then my dream suddenly becomes blue if they send blue colors. Or they can also alter the dream, because I might just suddenly go to a blue space or to the sea or to the sky. So I think we'll start seeing much more of this in the 2020s, the use of the internet as a sensory extension or as a sense itself. Now, the brain and the software have merged. I feel no difference between the software and the brain. That's when I started feeling cyborg, when I started feeling the difference between the software and the brain. And this is what I tried to explain to the UK government in 2004, because they didn't allow me to renew my passport, because they said there was a problem with the picture of the passport. They said that there's a law that says electronic equipment is not allowed on passport photos. So they said that I had to remove the antenna of the picture. I told them that I was a cyborg, that I felt that I was a union between the cybernetics and the organism, and that they should allow the antenna as a body part. And in the end, they said yes, so they allowed me to appear in the passport in 2004 with this first prototype. This helps travel, because in airports, they don't usually like technology, so there's issues always at airport security. I have to go an hour ahead because they like to test if it's explosive or not, or also they want to check if it's true or not. Also, now I'm applying for Swedish citizenship because the materials I used to create this body part are Swedish, so I am Swedish because a body part of myself is Swedish. So I'm telling them that I think there should be a 6-point in the requirements for becoming Swedish, where it says that if you have a Swedish body part, you are also entitled to apply for Swedish citizenship. They still haven't replied, but I think that in the future we might see many people that might identify as being part of a country because they have a body part from that country. If you have, for example, a heart transplant and your heart is Chinese, then after a period of time, why shouldn't you also be allowed to apply for Chinese citizenship? If you feel Chinese and you've had a body part from China for 10 years, for example, I think you should at least be entitled to apply for citizenship. So my life has changed in many ways, because now that I hear color, I can also dress in a way that it sounds good, not in a way that it looks good. For example, if I want to wear a color combination in C major, I would dress like this. These 3 colors create C major, so it creates a happy combination, basically. This is a minor chord, so I would dress like this in a funeral, because these 3 colors sound as a minor chord. Or I can also design clothes that sounds in a specific song, so I can wear songs depending on the patterns. I created this tie, for example, that when I look at the tie, I can hear electronic music. So the longer the tie, the longer the melody. And also the way I see interior design has changed, because now that I hear colors, I would change the way houses are painted, for example. I would paint floors all in red, because red is the lowest frequency, so it gives a profound sound. The living rooms would be pink, yellow, and blue, because it gives a C major chord when you go in a room. Exit doors would be green, because green is in the middle of the spectrum, so it gives you like a tuning fork before you go out in the street. And bedrooms would have 3 colors: B, which is the note turquoise, E, which is a type of pink, and D, which is a type of violet. So you would have B, E, D, bed, so it makes sense to have these 3 colors in a bedroom. And then the kitchens would be violet, because violet is in the highest range of the spectrum, so it gives you like an alert sound in a kitchen. And it's also a color that we don't usually eat. Food has changed a lot as well, because now when I look at food, I can hear music. So depending on how I put the food on the plate, I can actually eat my favorite song, or I can just compose new music, especially with salads, because salads have lots of different colors, so lots of different notes. So you can really eat songs, and I'm collaborating with a restaurant in Spain where you can actually hear the sound of the food. It's a plate player. We call it the chroma phone. So you put the food on the plate, the chef puts it on a plate, and then when it's served, you can turn around the plate, and then there's a chip that allows you to hear the frequencies of the colors. So you turn it around, and then you can hear the music. So you can order some Mozart as made dish or some Lady Gaga dessert, and then it's served on the plate, and you can hear the music. So you can eat different songs. Imagine if you have children that don't like eating vegetables, maybe they will like eating vegetables if the vegetable sounds like Justin Bieber or something. So it might change the way you perceive vegetables. So now I can compose music by looking at things, because I hear colors. Instead of playing an instrument, I can simply look at different colors and then compose music. This is a composition example. Maybe if there's some... So I can just amplify the sounds from my head to the audience, and then they can hear the colors that I'm looking at. So I don't really need to play an instrument. I just look at colors and I compose music. These are called color concerts. So I really enjoy walking around supermarkets, because it's like going to a nightclub now. There's so many colors, so many different melodies, especially the zone with cleaning products. That's the most exciting area of all supermarkets, because it has unexpected colors. Milk is silent. So white elements would be completely silent. It's not only supermarkets have changed, it's also art. I can now listen to a Picasso. I can listen to a Da Vinci. All painters have become composers now, and they all sound different. For example, This is the scream. I can actually hear the scream. Very microtonal. And then other painters sound much louder. For example, Andy Warhol has a lot of saturation, so you can hear an Andy Warhol from the other end of the museum usually, because it's very saturated. Also, the way I sense people have changed. When I look at someone, I can hear their face. So each face sounds different. And I like doing sound portraits, where I get close to someone's face, I round out the sound of the eyes, the lips, the hair, the skin, and the eyes, and then I just send them an MP3 of their face so they can listen to themselves, and that's a sound portrait. The first one I did was of Prince Charles. I asked him if I could listen to his face, and this was his reaction when I asked him. We all sound different. For example, Judi Dench has silent hair. James Cameron has a very high-pitched sound of skin. Al Gore has different notes in his eyes, so it's different sounds. Steve Reich has a melody in his eyes, he has a pattern. Steve Wozniak has eyes that sound like green apples. Moby has silent hair, because he has no hair, so he has one note less than other people. And Robert De Niro, a very high-pitched sound of skin. Woody Allen, very soft. Philip Glass, very microtonal. And then Bono had very loud glasses here. So we all have a specific sound. And what really shocked me is that what people say that they're black, they're not actually black. And people who say they're white, they're not actually white. People who say they're white, they're actually a tone of light orange. And people who say they're black, they're actually very dark orange. So the fact that people say that humans are black and white is completely false. We are all different shades of orange. So hearing colors also allows me now to create sound portraits as a concert, so face concerts. So I look at people's face, I create rhythms, and then the colors of the audience become the sound of the concert, basically. So the concert is based on the colors of the face of the audience. So if the concert sounds really bad, it's their fault, because that's where the music is coming from. The last face concert I did was of Prince Albert II of Monaco. He liked the sound of his face so much that he's using his Zinc now as his ringtone. So whenever someone calls him, he hears the sound of his face. So when we started this project, we had no idea if it would have any kind of secondary effect. It was an experiment, and it did have a secondary effect, is the fact that not only colors are sounds, but also sounds become colors. So when I hear the telephone line, for example, I feel green because the telephone lines are usually, the sound that they create are green. So also when I hear music, each note that I hear relates to a color. So I can now paint what I hear. This is Mozart's Queen of the Night, note by note, from the middle to the end. And this is Baby Baby by Justin Bieber, from the first note to the end, which came out very pink. And each voice that we use has different colors as well, because we use different frequencies. So you can also transpose speeches. This is Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, and the other one is a speech by Hitler, which looks very different because they used very different types of frequencies. Also, these codes can be used for musicians, so that in concerts they don't read the score, but they read the colors on stage, or also in public spaces where people can download an app and then they can listen to the colors. So this public sculpture is actually music, and people can just listen to the music by downloading the app and walking underneath. Also, the projections at night create colors, and this creates music for the people. So the reaction I've had socially for having an antenna in my head has been constant. I've been approached by strangers every single day since 2004. What people think it is has changed. In 2004, many people thought it was a reading light, and they would ask me if I could turn on the light. In 2005-06, many people thought it was a microphone like this one. In 2007-08, many people thought it was a hands-free telephone, like taxi drivers had hands-free telephones. In 2008-09, they thought it was a GoPro cam, that I was filming my life. In 2012-13, many people thought it was something to do with Google Glass. In 2014-15, children would ask me if it was some kind of extendable selfie stick. And in 2016, since last year, people just shouted me Pokemon, and they tried to catch me. So it keeps changing. Also, a few years ago, I went to the south of Italy, and an old man asked me what this was, and I explained it's an antenna to listen to the colors. And he said, this is very good, but can you do cappuccinos with it? Because it looks like a... So it changes depending on where I am. Hopefully, in the 2020s, people will just think it's an antenna, a new sensory organ that gives me a new sense, and people will just ask what sense the antenna gives me. We created the Cyborg Foundation in 2010 to help people become cyborgs. We've done different projects. This is a pair of earrings that allow you to feel presence in front of you. When you close your eyes, you can feel a vibration from the left to the right. Depending on the interval, you can tell what the speed is of movement in front of you. If you turn around the earrings, you can sense if there's presence behind you. So the same senses that we are now giving to machines, they can also be applied to humans. So instead of giving your car senses that you don't have, like sensing what's behind you, you can also apply this to your own body. Also, we've created the seismic sense. It's an implant inside the body that vibrates whenever there's an earthquake in the world. So Moon Rivas is in New York now, but if there's an earthquake in Japan, she will feel a vibration in her body. She calls it the seismic sense. She has like 2 heartbeats, her own heartbeat and the earth beat. So she feels a strong connection with nature now. She also has a new sensor inside her body that allows her to feel the moonquakes. So whenever there's a moonquake, she feels a vibration in her body. So we can also use senses, new senses, to connect to space. Instead of physically traveling to space, we can use our internet-connected senses to feel things that are outside our planet. I also use my internet connection to connect to NASA's International Space Station. This allows me to detect extraterrestrial colors, and it's an overwhelming experience. I can only do it for 2 hours a day because the spectrum that I receive from space is much greater than the one I receive here. So we call this becoming sensstronauts or mindstronauts, where instead of physically going to space, we can use the internet to send our senses to space and feel that we are there without having to physically go there. We've also created the North Sense, which is a chip that can be placed in the middle of your body. So whenever you face north, you feel a vibration. This will allow you to feel the electromagnetic field of the Earth, or the magnetic field of the Earth, and allow you to have a sense of orientation that our species doesn't have. There's many species that have senses that we don't have, like sensing north. Many animals can feel the magnetic north. Many animals can sense ultraviolet, infrared, ultrasound, infrasound. We think that we are the first generation that can actually decide what senses we want to have and what organs we want to have, and that we should start exploring this. By becoming cyborgs, by merging biologically with technology, we can actually extend our perception of reality, and also by designing ourselves, it means that we'll have to design the planet less. For example, if we all had night vision now, we wouldn't have to create artificial light. So if a whole society would have night vision, cities would be dark, and we wouldn't be spending so much energy to create artificial light. And then cities would be dark, the planet would be much better without using so much energy, and other species would also benefit from this. Other projects I've done is that I had a tooth missing, so I had it replaced with a small tooth with a light inside. So in case of total darkness or in case of emergency, I can just click and open my mouth, and then I have emergency light inside my mouth. This is something that we could all have. If you have any tooth missing, you could have it replaced with a small tooth with a small light inside. This is bioluminescence, giving light in total darkness. Also, we created two teeth that can actually communicate to each other. One was placed in my mouth, and the other tooth was placed in Moon Riba's mouth. And then whenever I click, Moon receives a vibration in her mouth, and whenever she clicks in anywhere in the world, I receive a vibration in my mouth. So we both know the Morse code, so we can actually, depending on the way I click, I can actually send words to Moon, and Moon can send words back. So we can actually communicate from tooth to tooth, wherever we are. We call this the transdental communication system. It's useful because you don't need air conduction, you don't need sight, you don't need ears. You can actually communicate through vibration. So it's a system that would work in space, and it would work under the water. We did the first demonstration in Sao Paulo last year, and it worked. And it's actually working with Bluetooth. So you click, it goes to the phone, from the phone to the phone, from the phone to the mouth. And it's actually through Bluetooth. So it's actually a Bluetooth tooth that allows you to give communication. So I think, just to end My current project is to create a new sensory organ for the sense of time. I'm going to have it implanted in my head this year. It's going to be between the skin and the bone, and it's going to give me a point of heat that's going to go around my head, and it will take 24 hours for the heat to go around my head. So I will automatically know what time it is by feeling the point of heat around my head. It's going to be like an orbit, and it will take 24 hours for the orbit to go around. The question is whether or not, if I have this sense for several months or years, it should become subliminal, and then whenever this happens, if I want a certain situation to last longer, I'll program time to go a bit slower so that I feel that time is stretching. Or if I want time to go a bit slower, I'll just program it so it goes a bit faster. So it's basically taking Albert Einstein's theory of time relativity into practice and to see whether or not, if we have a sensory organ for time, if we can control our perception of time. If this happens, then we can all travel in time. We can make it spin so that we feel that we're going forward or backwards in time. We might have less jet lag, because if you're on a plane, you could control it so it's on flight mode, so that your sense of time travels at the same speed as the plane. Or you could also froze in time. So it's taking an experiment to see what would happen if a species would have an organ for the sense of time. This is the prototype that is going to be placed in my head later this year. So just to end, I think we are witnessing an important moment in history where we are the first generation that can actually decide what species we want to be. I think we are all trans species, because we can now decide what senses and organs to add to our life. This will mean that in future generations, when technology is organic, when this antenna can be 3D printed with my own DNA, and when the senses can be added genetically modifying ourselves, it means that our children will actually be born with these new senses. So I think we are witnessing the renaissance of our species because for the first time, we are also part of the evolution. So I think we should all take into consideration the future that is coming. The diversity that we're going to see in this century is much greater than the diversity we've seen, and this should be positive, because this will allow us to connect much more with nature and with other species. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neo.
Thank you.
It was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Really wonderful. Just one question. What do you think will be the first, the first cyber technology that will be largely applied?
Well, I think simple senses like extending our sight or extending our hearing is something that I think will be much more practical. Like the sense of north there's hundreds of people that have bought this new sense just in the last few months. So now there's a new generation of people that will have a sense of orientation that they didn't have before. So that's the first sense that has actually been sold to people.
But sense extension, this is the first application, or maybe here or something from, which is real. This is another scenario.
Well, there's one thing is AI, so it would be artificial intelligence, adding artificial intelligence in your body, or the other thing would be AS, artificial senses. This, for example, is AS, not AI. It would be AI if it would be giving me the names of colors.
Yes.
So if this was telling me red, green, yellow, that would be artificial intelligence. But it's not artificial intelligence. It's giving me the frequency of light, and then the intelligence needs to be created by my brain.
Is in your brain still.
AS. So yes, the I is created by my brain, but the S, the sense, is the artificial. So I think that we'll see two branches. The creation of AI and the creation of AS, but they all
they will converge finally, probably. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.